Okay, are we all set?
Commissioner Wilson is just joining as well.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay, good evening. I'm calling this public hearing to order in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40 in the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening on October 16th, 2024, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interest of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and the protection of wildlife habitat. This evening's hearings will be followed by a regular meeting, and in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission, the public may access this meeting through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and then *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Dee Hernandez with the Environment Department.
Oya Hussein with the Environmental Department.
Great, thank you. Okay, now I'll call the roll of commissioners present. Commissioner Linay.
Amy Linay.
Commissioner Wilson.
Mike Wilson.
Commissioner Richmond.
Alice Richmond.
Commissioner Herbst.
Ann Herbst.
Great, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda this evening is notice of intent for DEP file number 006-2011 and Boston file number 2024-033 from Fort Point Associates on behalf of Redgate for the proposed construction of a 6th-floor multifamily residential building with ground floor retail, stormwater management system, open space enhancements, and streetscape improvements located at 1141 Bennington Street in East Boston. Resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, 25-foot waterfront area, 100-foot salt marsh area, and 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening, Chair Parker. Hi, I'm Katie Moniz with Fort Point Associates.
Good evening.
We are here.
Go ahead.
Sure, I've got the entire group here tonight. We are here on behalf of Redgate. Liz Bayo of their team is here in addition to Katie Cruz of Hancock Associates. And we've also brought Amy Corte from Arrow Street and Sean Sanger from Copley Wolf. Next slide, please. We're excited to be before you tonight for a multifamily residential with a small portion of retail here in East Boston. Next slide, please. This project is a 6-story building, 220 market rate and affordable housing units on the former site of the New England Casket Company, for many of you who may have known that facility. The new building to be constructed here will be all electric residential. It'll have rooftop solar, and it'll be designed in a sensitive manner to respond to its surroundings. It is designed for sea level rise in accordance with Boston's policies, elevating the residential and the retail, as well as all the critical building systems and the proposed parking area. In addition to work on the project site itself, there's work in the adjacent private roadway, Austin Avenue, and substantial work in the surrounding Bennington Street corridor. Next slide, please. So this site, for many who knew it as the New England Casket Company, is sandwiched between Bennington Street, the MBTA Blue Line, and the Orient Heights Rail Yard, as well as the Belle Isle Marsh to the south, and the residential neighborhood of Palermo Street. This site underwent some dramatic change in early 2019 when there was a catastrophic fire that took the building down. It was so substantial that they had to demolish the entire facility. They needed to remediate the site and stabilize it until they could decide what to do next here. In the time since it was the New England Casket Company, it has functioned as the laydown yard for municipal contractors, and today is in that limited use. Next slide, please. it can be a little complicated here as to where everything is. And so we have brought this graphic along here to try to help describe the space a little bit better. And certainly want to thank staff for being out here on multiple occasions with us to do site walks over the years. We've been working on this project since 2021. So the area, for those who are less familiar with this site, in dark pink is 1141 property. The property is where the building will be physically constructed. The area in purple is the MBTA tracks and the Orient Height Yard, as well as the portion of the private roadway of Austin Avenue that is owned in full by the MBTA. Austin Avenue, being a private roadway, also provides access to the project site in light pink and to DCR in light green. The dark green area is the Belle Isle Marsh Reservation itself. As you can see from the bottom right here, this area is highly degraded, highly industrialized, and this area is being used to access the Orient Height Yard from Bennington Street. It has no stormwater infrastructure today. It is deeply and heavily compacted gravel in most form, and the site is enclosed by a limited construction fence. Next slide, please. So we are here in front of the Boston Conservation Commission, and we also brought with us Mary Rimmer, our wetland scientist, who delineated the resource areas that are adjacent and on this site with us. In partnership with DCR, she flagged the edge of the Belle Isle Marsh Salt Marsh, which you can see in green, as well as the adjacent coastal bank area. We have no work within the Belle Isle Marsh Reservation itself and zero impacts to either of those resource areas. The resource areas, as we continue to very quickly come up to topographically from the marsh to the site, include land subject to coastal storm flowage, the 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank itself, Boston's waterfront area, the 100-foot salt marsh area as defined by the Boston Ordinance. And then we have a second coastal bank, which you can see in blue here, which is delineated by topography. And on the project site, that is not a vegetated area. It is stabilized stone and the remainders of the building foundation itself. Next slide, please. So as I noted, the opportunity for this project is really to redevelop a site here that fundamentally has been very historically degraded. One of the things that we can do within the private roadway is to create a narrower path of travel, to install buffer landscaping on both sides, to introduce very significant new trees within the site, 40 new trees in total, and to really think about opportunities here for public realm improvement and stormwater improvement. Next slide, please. As I noted, Katie Cruz is here with me from Hancock. She's going to talk a little bit more about stormwater design.
Great, thank you, Katie. As Katie mentioned, in the current condition, there are no provisions for mitigation of stormwater runoff or water quality treatment. The project is a redevelopment, but the stormwater system has been designed to fully comply with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. The system will consist of roof drains and catch basins to collect stormwater runoff, water quality treatment units, and a robust system of subsurface stormwater chambers from which all of the water collected up to the 100-year storm will infiltrate into the ground. There will be at least 97% TSS removal. Next slide, please. For construction period erosion controls, there will be an implementation of a stormwater pollution prevention plan. There will be straw wattles and silt fence around the limit of work and also along the edge of Austin Avenue. There will be gravel construction entrance and exit. Stockpiled materials will be covered and stabilized, and trucks transporting materials will be covered. There will be wetting down and sweeping of work areas for cleanliness, and there will be a spill management kit and a plan for that, and stabilization of exposed soils during construction. I'll hand it back to Katie.
Thanks, Katie. I know that was a lot to digest. We want to be respectful of the commission's time, so we're happy to take any questions that you might have on this project.
Okay, Great, thank you. First question I had was something that Ms. Cruz just mentioned about the washing down and sweeping of the area. Obviously you're close to a sensitive resource area. What exactly are you going to be doing to control dust emissions and things of that nature leaving the site and migrating their way to the salt marsh?
Absolutely. It's a really important question. And, I think we're excited to work with the commission here, not only in this discussion tonight, but during the period to continue monitoring our contractor in work. The site itself, as it exists today, is set a little bit lower than Austin Avenue as a work area, which really allows it to be fairly well contained in general. We think fundamentally here, two of the things that can be done most strongly here to help mitigate sediment. One is to trap and not allow any runoff off of this site into sensitive resource areas. And then the other piece is to really be controlling dust while they're working out there. It can be windy here with some of the topography in East Boston, and those are really the provisions that we think are probably most effective in this location. The other piece here, I think, which is really always important is, working with a good contractor. And Redgate has a history of working in Boston and Revere, working in areas in particular where these conditions need to be managed. And so I think they're also an excellent partner here as we move forward towards construction.
Okay, so will there be something like a construction fence that'll be screened that would filter out any fugitive emissions?
Absolutely. So around the project site itself, and Eleanor or Dee Dee, whoever's controlling the screen, if you wouldn't mind terribly, could we go back maybe again to kind of look at our work site and perimeter? Well, thank you while we do this. Anything with this site plan will do. So we do anticipate that there will be full construction fence enclosure around the project site itself, and agree that screening of that fence would be appropriate and would make some sense. Additionally, as we work in Austin Avenue, which is an area where we're going to need to continue to provide access for the MBTA while we're working, I think we would schedule to work on one half of the road at a time and really to set those types of provisions to limit for migration on either side within the roadway.
Okay. I noticed in the site photos, there is stockpiling of soils occurring now. Can you tell me what those activities are? They seem to be stockpiles of different colored soils.
Sure. I'm not sure I'm the expert on this. And if you wouldn't mind, go back to the page so we could all look together. The contractor working out there today is D'Alessandro. They have contracts with the city and with utility providers to do work in and around East Boston. So I believe the materials that they're stockpiling are related to utility and road work, both the bedding of roadways and trenches. When we were on site, staff did notice that there could be improved dust control by the contractor. And so we provided a contact to D'Alessandro that the commission can speak to. And they also committed to improving those conditions and to continuing to work through with a program where they wet down all stockpiles and keep them covered.
Okay, so Katie, are those soils though, are they soils that are being sorted out and being characterized before being disposed of, whether to landfills or to be used as clean fill elsewhere? What's the status of those soils?
I couldn't speak to that specifically because we're not involved directly with any of the projects that they're actively working on. I would assume, as you do, that it probably is a combination. From observation, it looked like fairly consistent material. And so my expectation is they didn't seem to be doing a lot of moving the piles around. It seemed like more they had delivered piles of material that they were using for roadway base.
Okay, so who's in control of the property now? I know we've got some DOT land here, some DCR land. Where the stockpiles are specifically, who is the owner?
Liz, so I don't want to speak for you, but currently I believe Redgate is in control of the site.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. That's where the stockpiles are in.
Okay, so I would expect that maybe we'd be having some more discussions with staff regarding the control of those stockpiles. And I think that's separate from this NOI, but I personally would like to know a little bit more about what's happening there. Thank you. I think that's it for me for now. Elena, what do you have?
Thank you, Chair Parker. So, yes, so one of the questions that we had was about the stockpiles, but again, we've been in touch with them and are happy to follow up with any additional questions that the commission might have. We also just wanted to note that there is that existing fence that divides the salt marsh from the area where the work is going to be conducted. So one option to perhaps mitigate some of anything really from the either construction site or once the parcel is actually in use by residents might be to improve that fence and maybe replace it with a fence that is a little bit newer and might also have space underneath it for wildlife passage. So maybe asking for that 8 inches between the bottom of the fence and the ground. Another thing that staff was considering if the commission would be open to it is perhaps just given the sensitive nature of the site, asking for an environmental monitor to be hired so that staff would get regular updates, perhaps weekly or however frequently the commission deems appropriate, just to see how conditions look and to make sure that everything is okay. Again, with the proximity to the salt marsh, but those were our main notes here.
Okay, so Elena, if I could ask you about that last issue, an environmental monitor during construction, is that what you're looking for?
Yes, yeah. So similar to what was included in the conditions for the 90 Allendale project, and also something that my understanding is that DEP often includes in their orders of conditions for any superseding orders of condition is we have some standard language for it. So it would be a wetland specialist who would serve as the environmental monitor. The person's credentials would be submitted to commission staff for review and approval. And the commission can decide how frequently they would want to see reports. Again, those can be weekly, monthly, or something other than those options. And basically the environmental monitor would be responsible for overseeing all of the activities that are within the resource areas in this project.
Okay.
They would also specifically monitor the site during or immediately after any precipitation events that are 1/2 inch or greater in a 24-hour period and immediately after winter snow melt.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. So as far as that other fence, who has control of that fence? Whose property is the fence that separates the salt marsh from the property? Or I guess that's the Austin Street ROW right of way?
Actually, it's beyond the Austin Street right of way. So the fence that you observe when you're walking out there today, the majority of it is actually within the Belle Isle Marsh Reservation itself. And so as Elena is noting when we were out there, right now it does sort of create a perimeter along this edge here, which I think previously has really been about safety and security. There's a fairly steep slope here that drops off beyond that fence. And additionally, I think DCR has struggled with people doing a fairly significant amount of dumping of construction debris, home debris, other items within the marsh in these locations. So that fence is fully on the reservation property. We are not proposing at this time to remove or alter that fence, but we are happy to work with DCR and think it certainly is reasonable for the commission to consider whether there could be more suitable options than the fence DCR has today.
Okay, is anybody from DCR on the call? I don't see anyone.
I don't think so. We reached out to them in advance, and I know that they did potentially have something else on the hearing tonight, but they have fully reviewed the NOI, and certainly we can be in contact with them regarding the fence.
Okay, Elena, were you able to talk to anybody from DCR about the fence?
Not about this, but I'd be happy to do so after this hearing.
Yeah, I think that might make some sense here, so we can get a discussion going about it. I know that it's in bad shape in a few areas. Okay, Commissioner Linay.
Michael, before we do
Yeah.
that, can I just ask one other question about
Sure.
the staff recommendations, please?
Mhm.
On the list of staff recommendations was something about signage, which I thought was a terrific idea. Elena, are you still interested in that?
Yes, thank you. So another thought that we had was that perhaps once residents have moved in, maybe as a prior to certificate of compliance condition, we could see some language for signage that would inform residents and anybody else using the public spaces at this address of the salt marsh and its ecological values and basically how to coexist mindfully with it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Linay.
Thank you. Just a few questions and comments. I think, given this very sensitive site in the Belle Isle Marsh, we had some just concerns about impacts to that resource area. So one is actually shadows cast by this building. I think the impression or our understanding on the park side is that it would shadow year round an area of the marsh. I think another, so if you can talk to that, and then another issue with that building height is just that experience from the marsh perspective. So I think seeing a rendering or a view of that could be helpful. And then you did mention coordination with DCR. So I think that was just another comment about that private way, that the portion to the center line on their side is DCR access of, or they would need to, I think, approve the plans for that, but it sounds like you are talking with them. And then I think the other one sort of detailed comment on the erosion control is, I think seeing the straw wattles maybe don't feel adequate for such, again, like a sensitive area. So, silt sock, something like that might be actually more effective in really ensuring that no sediment is washing into the marsh. And then one other thing, given the habitat that this marsh does provide, I know you talked about creating habitat, I think, on the marsh side of Austin Ave. I guess my feeling about habitat and attracting wildlife towards the building is a little bit concerning. And I think I did see in your documents something about the materials on the building would minimize bird strikes. I wondered if you could talk to that as well.
Thank you so much. So one of the great parts of being able to bring the whole team here is that we do have Amy Corte from Arrow Street, and she could talk a little bit to the shadow study that we conducted as part of our Article 80B review for this project. Amy, and if you would also just share a little bit of some of the things that your team has learned and is incorporating as far as design that's sensitive to birds.
Sure, Katie. Happy to. So in terms of the shadows, due north is basically straight up the page. And so we did do a comprehensive shadow study. Actually, I was trying to pull them up as you were asking that question. So I don't have the exact times, but basically the sun rises on the right side of the page, due south is at the bottom of the page. So it's really only in those afternoon and evening hours when you would get any impacts on the marsh. Again, we can look up those precise dates and answer the question more precisely with the shadow studies, but it was part of our Article 80 approval. In terms of the birds in the buildings, we actually, in addition to Mary Brimmer, who was on our team and Sean's team for landscape design worked with an expert in birds, lighting pollution and building design to really get her feedback as we were developing the buildings from that conceptual point of view. So there was a number of things that we did. One was obviously the lighting. We looked to the Audubon Society's Lights Out program to inform how we would approach the exterior lighting. And obviously there's some great best practices and standards there that we would definitely look to implement here. Anything from using the down shields to turning off the floodlights. Ideally, we would be turning them off during those migratory periods. From midnight to 6 a.m. is usually the typical time. And then if we can get some of those on automated motion sensors, and then really just rely on some low lighting for some pedestrian safety there, that would be our recommended best practice. For the glass areas within the common areas, we've got some areas of glass which are on level 2 for amenity space, and then the connector between the building. And so in our design proposal to the city that they approved, we talked a lot about the fritted glass and basically using that frit at the appropriate pattern and the scale so that it would disrupt the reflections for the birds, because if the bird sees the tree and the reflection in the glass, they're more likely to fly into it. So that has been built into our schematic design proposal and the pricing. In terms of the interior light fixtures, there's some best practices around that as well. So again, anything from the common areas and the amenity spaces, putting those lights on motion sensors so they stay dark when nobody's in the room. We've got shades, blinds, and curtains in all of our rooms. So the blinds are built into all of the residential units. Redgate actually only relies on task lighting for the living rooms and the bedrooms. And task lighting or just simple area lighting is much better at the perimeter of the building for the birds rather than downlights. And then again, we've got the shades for the residential units up above. In terms of the habitat, we did look towards best practices that were coming out of UK for the regenerative design. So we researched the birds that were migrating in the marsh, as well as additional pollinators that we could help support with some of the habitat around the building. And so we looked at bee brick and creating kind of smaller, more localized habitats on the south side of the building where it's nice and warm to again create kind of these nesting opportunities and areas to support some of our pollinators that occupy the urban areas. Does that answer your question?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. And just wanted to acknowledge as well that we agree and the silt sock absolutely can be incorporated into our plan here for surrounding perimeter control.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Katie, I think we'd like to see the shadow study in the file. So we don't have any information about how many hours during the day and during what seasons there'll be shadows cast on the marsh. I think that'd be important to understand. Commissioner, what? Go ahead. Someone say something. Nope. It was a dog. Okay. Commissioner Wilson.
No further questions here either. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richmond. Commissioner Herbst.
Yeah, a few questions and concerns. I'm concerned about the both the filling and the paving in the waterfront area, which has typically been an area that we ask to be vegetated. So that approving that would be a real departure from our practice. I'm also concerned that the filling comes very close to at one location to the coastal bank and potential impacts there. I don't think we've seen a landscape plan, and the filling, it looks fairly steep. I'm wondering if you're actually planning retaining walls or how that would approach the bank. But those are my primary concerns about the project. The other category is the stormwater plan, and some of this may be that this is not my area of expertise, and we don't have our best expert here tonight. But in one place in the plan, it looked like you checked off that runoff is impacted or coming from a higher pollutant source, and then nothing was checked in standard 5. So I was wondering about that. I'll stop there. So I have a few questions on stormwater. I don't know if you want to take them one at a time or keep going.
Sure. Why don't we maybe start with some of the grading and planting discussion? And if I could ask that we advance to the screen here that shows our planting plan, and we can use that to maybe talk through it. They also provided a supplement exhibit, which I believe was provided to commissioners, that helps to take away some of the other noise and just talk about grades. And we hope that was helpful as well.
It was, thank you.
Excellent. So if you would not mind, whoever's controlling the slides to advance to the planting plan, please. Thank you very much. Okay, so the first piece here, paving within the Austin Avenue right-of-way. So in practice today, that roadway for the majority, if not all of its full width, is a heavily compacted gravel. When you observe it in a rain condition, water is just absolutely sheet flowing off of this space. While we did design and very conservatively design our stormwater system to account for that, the amount of runoff that is coming off of this today is neither a benefit to the marsh nor to the waterfront area as a whole. We really think one of the really strongest drivers of the work associated with this project that can be beneficial to the marsh is restoring Austin Avenue. That area today really presents some of the most degradation that you get within the marsh itself. And so I hope the commission will also view the work within the waterfront area within Austin Avenue's right of way to be highly beneficial as part of the redevelopment. The next piece here was a question about whether or not retaining walls are needed. So within the Austin Avenue right of way, we are proposing no walls. We require no additions, no stabilization out there. We are elevating between Bennington Street and if you can see sort of the hexagon shape here in the center of your screen in compliance with Boston's recommendations for Climate Ready Boston, which was really as part of the phase 2 work, the city really promoted the idea that there be strong protection in place for the blue line tracks here. You know, what is happening today fundamentally is that there are pretty significant flood pathways back into the blue line tracks in multiple directions in East Boston. So one of the things the project has done as part of our dialogue with both DCR and MBTA here is to work to elevate our project site itself. Also, there is a retaining wall behind the building along the track line that helps to create that linear level of protection along the blue line tracks in which to limit flood pathways. And we bring that all the way down the back perimeter to the edge corner of our site here to the far left of your page. And we continue to dialogue with MBTA, and I know Hannah Wagner from MBTA is here today, about how we can incorporate the flood resilience that we've created as part of this project into work that the MBTA is looking at for the Orient Heights yard itself. So the sort of strategy and approach here to the work in Austin Avenue, to your point, is to minimize the area of the roadway itself, to create that buffer habitat that you can see in our planting plan here, to promote the upland edge of the Belle Isle Marsh to be soft and sustainable, and really some of the things that Amy talked about here about attracting pollinators and other upland species to enjoy that space. And then beyond where the hexagon is, the connection from there down to the MBTA gate is about maintaining the access that they have today to their secondary main egress to Orient Heights. And they use this corridor today to be able to access with heavy equipment and other pieces into the yard from that location. So I'm hoping that that covers sort of the work we're proposing and some of the filling and paving dialogues. And please let me know if I missed anything.
I don't think so. I'll just note that I'm sure that area could be improved. I think we would be looking, or I would be looking for it to be improved with vegetation, not a road. I understand it's highly compacted now, but I think in the waterfront area, that's an area we've consistently try to protect as going along with our regulations. So
next question was stormwater, and if we could advance maybe to that. Perfect, thank you.
So one question was just whether this is an area with higher level pollutant loads.
So the existing site, the Casket Company factory as it existed, did not generate higher pollutant loads. There were not enough vehicles driven to that site. And in the future, the multifamily here will also not constitute higher pollutant loads. We are voluntarily providing a higher level of treatment on this site because we realize that the marsh is a sensitive receptor. And so we do want to really get our TSS removal and our recharge numbers up as high as we can.
Okay, it may be that I don't read these the forms that well, but on page 5, it looks like you've checked off that it involves runoff from land used with higher pollutant loads. That's why I asked. So you can take a look at that. It's standard 4. And elsewhere in the stormwater report, it mentions that there's an area of paving where you will not be providing treatment, where it will be sheeting off. And I was wondering about that as well.
Sure, I think it's a little hard to see on this plan, but you can see the last set of catch basins that we have here, which is about 3/4 of the way down Austin Avenue itself. We are providing our stormwater treatment in our system to extend to where the property, fundamentally, the roadway becomes MBTA's. From that stretch down, we are maintaining their access in that stretch, but we are not proposing new stormwater. For two reasons. One is based on elevation. For anyone who's been out here at this site, the topography is fairly steep. So there is not a way to bring water that is generated at the lower portion of Austin Ave back up without pumping to this site. The other part is that we do want to be flexible here. We do understand that MBTA does have future plans themselves for thinking about the vulnerabilities and the resilience of the yard. And so we do anticipate that they will continue to make modifications and to make decisions about that portion of the road.
I see. I think that answers my questions. I think I would suggest that the commission consider a stormwater peer review for this project. It feels like it's a, highly sensitive area and a fairly complex project. I think that is something we should consider. That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6. Unmute yourself or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. While we're waiting, can we pull up the plan or the depiction of the waterfront area?
I believe it should be, yes, that's a perfect one right there.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst, you mentioned something about the, this has nothing to do with the waterfront area, peer review for the stormwater issues. Since we don't have Commissioner Sullivan with us, are you thinking that even without his expertise that we would still need a peer review?
Well, I'd certainly be interested in his expertise. I think I am mindful of the most recent peer review that we did on a complicated project where we did get quite a bit of more improvement and significant information that we otherwise wouldn't have. And so looking at this project, that's why I'm thinking this could be helpful.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's go to public comment. First up is Cindy Baxter.
Thank you. I'd like to, on behalf of Friends of Belle Isle Marsh, thank the commission for accepting our written testimony. We have outlined what we believe are 3 potential gaps in the notice of intent. We have also outlined 13 concerns and aligned them to risks that we understand to be part of the ordinance. We have, of course, done our best to collaborate, and we have appreciated the assistance of Redgate. But based on the details that we have been reviewing over the past months, we are convinced that we, as defenders of the marsh, need to stand up for this critical resource area. As such, we are requesting that the commission consider our concerns and deny this permit. If the Conservation Commission finds reason to allow the project to go forward, we do request that the commission consider an order of conditions that addresses the many concerns that we have. As Redgate's representative mentioned herself, this is a very complex project. It involves the MBTA with undefined plans for not only expansion, but resiliency. It also involves the DCR, and unfortunately they are not present. But there are complexities, even as far as property lines, that we at least have not seen identified clearly. With that in mind, our concerns are not only aimed at protecting the marsh, but protecting potential residents of the project in a very densely but small area, and ensuring viability of public services that are provided by the MBTA Blue Line. In addition to that, as I know you are all well aware, the cities of Boston, cities of Revere, and Winthrop all have major efforts along Bennington Street, which is a key evacuation route, to protect our environmental justice population. We as neighbors, as well as proponents of the marsh, feel that this is a critical nature-based solution that should not be confined by a project of this density, especially given the immense growth in population that has already occurred within the East Boston area. With that, I'd like to thank the Commission again for considering the detail that we have provided under our written documentation. We welcome any questions that may occur over the following days in addition to this hearing, so that we can clarify how we have come up with some of those items. And as the conservation manager for Friends of Belle Isle Marsh, I'd like to also point out that some of the board members of Friends of Belle Isle Marsh may also like to speak. Thank you again for allowing us this time.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Paul Scapicchio.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Thank you very much for letting me testify. My name is Paul Scapicchio. My family and I own 7 Ford Street, which is a stone's throw away from this site. Family members also grew up 2 doors down from the Tobiah family, who were the owners of New England Casket, who had that fire several years ago. So as somebody who's known the Tobiahs for years, I endeavored to come and help them as they sought to think about what to do with the parcel. And so I've been helping the team with their community outreach. And the thing that I wanted to really stress, and there's been some talk about sort of residents and people in the area, we conducted extensive outreach in that very area, in that neighborhood, which is a very traditional neighborhood that had some serious concerns. And this project held open houses on our site, at people's homes, and in the community. And through those open houses and probably 20 or 30 meetings, we learned a lot about what that neighborhood was concerned about. And there was issues relative to dumping in the area, issues relative to mostly traffic and fear of traffic coming through. And I think listening to those community concerns, the Redgate team and the Tobiah family really put together a plan that made the neighbors that live closest to the parcel happy, and they sort of approve of the project. So I guess I wanted to say that this is one of those few projects that actually has community support from the neighborhood that directly abuts it. And I think that's an important consideration as you start to think about, what do we do with an old site that's been sitting vacant for years, that hasn't been able to be redeveloped in a productive way by a family that's owned it for 90 years. And so, again, I think people in the neighborhood feel that this is a good use of that resource and that parcel. And I would just say that I'm fully supportive of the project, and I thank you for letting me testify.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. I'll just note that we review the project based on compliance with the performance standards for the wetlands resource areas. It's good to know the background, and our focus going forward is again on the resource areas. Mary Mitchell, I'm sorry if I skipped over you. I think I might have inadvertently lowered your hand. I apologize for that.
Mary, you're on mute.
I am sorry.
Great.
I'm Mary Mitchell, a past president of the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh, and been involved with the group for about 40 years. And I guess over those 40 years, the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh have really worked very hard to go from the original little marsh and property that was in East Boston to trying to get some watershed areas around the marsh to protect the marsh. So we've encouraged Revere. There's parcels in Revere that protect the marsh that was turned over to DCR, and the same in Winthrop, where some of the properties were turned over to DCR, so providing a bigger watershed. The one area that we don't have a lot of protection because the casket company was pre-existing the marsh was this area. So for us, I think this project is huge. It's right on, literally on the edge of the marsh. There are places where the road is now only about 8 feet from where the water comes in, where the salt marsh grass actually grows. So I think we would have liked to have seen a much more greenery in the back that would have been on their property, providing a little bit more of a protection for the marsh. I think the 5-foot elevation of the road, with the road being so close to the edge of the marsh, literally within feet, will just cause such a sharp drop off that it will not be advantageous to the marsh. So I guess I have great concerns about what's going on in the back of the building. I personally feel the project is too big to be this close to an ACEC area of critical concern. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we have some more work to do on this one. We definitely want to consult with Commissioner Sullivan regarding stormwater and Commissioner Herbst thoughts on a peer review. We'd like to get the shadow study into staff. A few other things we need to be thinking about is that waterfront area issue adjacent to the marsh. I have several other notes here. The fence with DCR. Katie would like to, and I guess we could do this in the conditions, but maybe we can start putting together the construction management plan regarding the dust emissions or potential dust emissions. Would like to know a little bit more, and again, this is separate, about the soils that are currently being stockpiled. So with that, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead,
Chair
please.
Parker, I just in other things to have the applicants take a look at the kinds of things that are covered under the long-term pollution prevention plan, snow disposal, pet waste, spill prevention, et cetera. All those things I don't think we've seen, and I would want to see.
Okay, and excuse me, but I thought was the landscaping plan not in here, or was it not detailed enough? Did you say that?
Sure, if you go forward a slide here, you can see the plan on screen. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, the seed mix. Yep, I see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought I heard someone say there wasn't a plan.
I had, but I may have missed it.
Okay, I'm like furiously scurrying through the NOI here as well. Okay, good. So with that,
Chair Parker, before you
okay.
motion, there's someone else with their hand up.
Oh, okay. Gail Miller, did not see that.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I think it's important for the commission to note, being our passionate interest in this marsh for 40 years. I'm also a past president of Belle Isle Marsh, Friends of Belle Isle Marsh. I would just like to add what we have seen already as impacts to residences along the Belle Isle Marsh Reservation. Boston, on the perimeter of Belle Isle Marsh, is involved in a small area of Revere at the Fredericks Park area to address flooding there. On the ocean end of Belle Isle Marsh and Revere and Winthrop borders, the news is always reporting from there about significant tides. In Winthrop, along Morton and Bank Streets, people have experienced the streets inundated, where the fire department had to remove all the water in all the basements. Marsh. The people are frantic and don't see any remedy in the near future, let alone 2070. And now we'll move on to the East Boston side, and we're knowingly putting folks in harm's way by building on the perimeter of the marsh, projected to be significantly flooded by 2070, but likely sooner. And this does not address stormwater. Stormwater is harder to project at the bottom of a hill where this project will sit. As we've seen in North Carolina, that area of the our country had never thought that they would experience the flooding, where many lives have been lost now. animals lost, people's homes just devastated. So I think we need to stop and think about what these impacts are going to mean to residences along the marsh. And I think to that extent, we talk about resilience, but yet it seems like, you know, if we're really serious, I'm not so sure that we put people in a large complex right on top of the marsh, where we traditionally look for marshes to migrate and protect the environment. So that's pretty much what I'd like to close with, but just one more comment. There has been filling, and yes, the area has been degraded over the years, but I'm not sure permits were ever issued for all the work that's been done so close to the marsh. So I would think that the commission would be interested in knowing what the impacts were and how work has been allowed to be done in that area. And as we saw recently, you know, all the dust floating around was pretty noticeable, and the filling of that road. So it's much wider than it used to be, and that has to do with the construction in that immediate area. So that's all, and I'd like to thank you for being able to comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to continue this hearing.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second,
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Commissioner Richmond,
aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 6-0. No, that carries 5-0. Thank you. Phantom commissioner there. Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Epsilon Associates on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for the proposed milling and paving, addition of bike lanes, signal replacement, and installation of traffic signage on Bennington Street in East Boston. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening. Alyssa Jacobs with Epsilon Associates. We are the environmental consultant for Mass DOT Highway for this project. Also here with me this evening, I believe, is the project design engineer, Maddie DeClerc, and a representative, Kevin Thompson from the Wetlands Environmental Group as well. Glad to know everybody is so familiar with Bennington Street after the prior hearing. That was great timing. So we're here for with a request for determination of applicability for some roadway improvements along Bennington Street. This project also extends into the Revere, and we've already been before the Revere Conservation Commission and received a negative determination for the proposed work. Next slide, please. So the project limits for the Boston portion of this project are from the City of Revere, Boston municipality line, southerly past Leverett Avenue by a couple hundred feet. This portion of Bennington Street serves as an important connection from East Boston to Revere, and it's a missing link in a bicycle accommodation in the regional network. It's also adjacent to the Belle Isle Marsh Reservation. Next slide, please. The purpose of this project is to provide bicycle accommodations where none currently exist. This is an existing cross-section of the roadway. It's currently 2 lanes in each direction with parking on both sides of the roadway, and a 6-foot sidewalk that is separated by a grass buffer also on both sides. Studying the project corridor, vehicular speed, and safety are factors, and there's no separate bicycle facilities on this stretch of roadway. Next slide, please. So the proposed activities include modifying the cross-section of the roadway. This is just a curb-to-curb project, so there's no land disturbing activities proposed. So it consists of milling and repaving and restriping the roadway to create a separated bike lane along the east side of the roadway. This will be a 2-directional bike lane, and it will be separated from the travel vehicular lanes by a marked buffer and stanchions in the roadway. It's also a reduction of travel lanes from 2 to 4, starting at Everett Street, and the creation of a shared center turn lane. Parking is limited to the west side of the roadway. And additional work includes the appropriate signage, roadway markings, and the stanchions for the lane separation. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures will be used, including silt sacks in the catch basins along the limits of the work. Next slide, please. The resource areas within the project footprint are the buffer zone to coastal bank, the buffer zone to marsh, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. As I mentioned, all work is being conducted within the existing roadway footprint, and no adverse impacts to resource areas are anticipated. There's also no change proposed to the roadway elevation, so it's just a milling and repaving project. I would take this time to point out that Mass DOT generally doesn't subscribe to following the local bylaws and resource areas, so we're limited to the Wetlands Protection Act resource areas for this particular project. Next slide, please. Portions of the proposed activities are considered exempt for those within the buffer zone. But otherwise, those that are within the land subject to coastal storm flowage are not. So that comprises almost the majority of the project limits. So it's a really straightforward project, and we're asking the commission issue a negative determination that the proposed work will not alter resource areas.
Okay, thank you. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
Yeah, so on this, our main note is that we would recommend including a condition that requires the submission of an erosion control plan before any work commences if the commission chooses to issue a negative determination of applicability.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Linay?
Just one question on the existing catch basins. Those are connected to storm sewer, is that right?
I would have to defer to the.
Hi, yes, yeah, thank you, sorry. I haven't studied that, to be honest, so I would need to look into that. We're not planning to change any drainage patterns nor any connection points.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, no questions here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know that I have enough expertise to ask it properly, but in response to the question about the storm drains, I just would feel better, I think, in saying that in joining or voting for negative determination, if we had some better idea than we have about the effect of whatever changes are going to be made on the storm drain, or whether the storm drains as they exist should be improved. So I must say, with some great reluctance, that I would vote to not close the hearing so that those questions can be asked of Commissioner Sullivan.
I can definitely, I guess, expand a little bit. So the proposed improvements are between the curb to curb width. We're not changing any cover type. We're not changing, just actually providing a mill and overlay, which is excellent. I was out there, I think, when we had the Revere Commission hearing, and it's in quite not excellent shape. But with no drainage patterns or cover type changes, any updates to the drainage system would be significantly above and beyond what we have scoped for this project. So we will we can follow up with you. I can reach out to we can have our designers reach out to the Boston
Water and sewer?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that's all right. So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, and just
I would-
confirm, but
I would make that recommendation that it be part, I don't know how we, if it's possible to make it in a negative determination of applicability, but I think part of what we're trying to do is to improve, situations where, what is existing really needs to be made better. And I have no idea whether that would be true along this area. But, I also believe that if we don't do it in conjunction with something like this, it just isn't going to get done. So, Mr. Chair, is it possible to include in a negative determination of applicability that condition?
I think it would be a stretch, but I think we just heard from Mass DOT that they will check with Boston Water and Sewer. And I think that's about as good as we would get.
Yeah, I think any modifications to the storm drain system would be, additional land disturbance that is not
Yeah.
this project.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. I mean, that's really what I'm getting at, is that would be something where they come in and it actually might even rise to the level of an NOI if that type of work was being done.
Yep. It's unfortunately from our program perspective, that's a non-starter on being able to proceed with this really, really important safety improvement to this corridor.
Do you know how many catch basins are along the area that you're planning to renovate?
Maddie and I can count on the plans. Let's see.
If they're every 200 feet, it's how long, Alyssa?
The entire project corridors, including Revere, I think is 2,600 feet.
So is that 130 of catch
No.
basins?
No, that'd be too many.
That'd be too many.
Yeah, we can. So the project is split between Revere and Boston. I don't know. I'd say there are 6 to 12 catch basins. I don't. Is there
Okay, if there's only 6 to 12, then I am comfortable with the representation that DOT will at least visit with Boston Water and Sewer about them. But if there are a lot more than that, then I have a different view.
Okay, thank you. Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Commissioner Herbst.
Yeah, just on the erosion control, but I'm comfortable to have you work that out with staff. And I know you're talking about silt sacks and the drains. I guess I would just like staff to take a look at, I know often when it's curb to curb, you don't do anything outside that, but it's in a windy area. It's right next to a salt marsh. I'd like to at least consider the need for something that might be above the curb that would stop flowing material if that seems necessary, to take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see we have a hand up. Cindy Baxter.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Parker. Just a brief statement that Friends of Belle Isle Marsh also have concerns and recognize that this is an important safety project. That said, there are safety issues today with flooding across the Bennington Street area. So our major concern is how to separate appropriate drainage from an improvement project. It's a bit of a conflict, and we appreciate the commissioners requesting more due diligence or investigation at least before anything is granted. Certainly not too great to do any biking if it's uncontrolled flooding, and that already exists today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with the conditions, the standard erosion control provisions, and that to Commissioner Herbst's point that the proponent work with staff to determine if additional erosion controls would be necessary for the above curbing area. Yep. Okay.
Can we add anything about talking between DOT and Mass Water and Sewer?
We have it on the record. I'd rather not, let's say, load this up with, I think we have enough conditions for a negative determination here. So would someone like to make the motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 5-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for an extension to the original order of conditions issued for DEP file number 0061802 and Boston file number 2021-033 from BSC Group on behalf of the Department of Conservation and Recreation for the proposed construction of a multi-use trail between Tinian, let's get this wrong, Tinian Beach and Morrissey Boulevard, located on Conley Street, Victory Road, and Morrissey Boulevard in Dorchester. Resource areas are coastal beach, coastal banks, salt marsh, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Elena, I guess we have a proposal, proposal presentation here.
I believe so, yes.
Oh, okay. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening. It's Diana Walden from BSC Group. We actually don't have any prepared slides, but I certainly am prepared to run through the current status of the project and where construction and activities are at if the commission's interested.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that up there. For some reason, I thought you had slides. Yeah, if you'd like to just take a minute, that would be helpful.
Sure. So I think everybody's fairly familiar with the project, but it is a section of the Neponset River Greenway for DCR. It included somewhere in the order of 3,000 linear feet, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to think if I have these details right at hand, but it was a shared use trail along the embankment of I-93. It included some improvements to city roadways and sidewalks, and then included about a 670-foot section of elevated boardwalk over a coastal inlet near Morrissey, eventually landing at Morrissey Boulevard from Victory. And so we received our order of conditions our original order of conditions in October 2021. And we filed the request for extension slightly more than 30 days in advance to basically ask the commission for an extension of the life of the permit. Progress is definitely been made, and we have maybe a few months left of work, but just not enough time to finish within the current life of the order of conditions. No resource area impacts. Everything that was previously permitted, we are not requesting any edits or revisions to those numbers, simply just trying to finish the work that was proposed and approved. So very quickly, construction began in early 2023 after lengthy processes of getting other permits, such as the Chapter 91 waterways license, going out to bid, getting a contractor in place. And so at this point, Conley Street is 100% complete with curbing, drainage, paving, and sidewalks. Victory Road sidewalk and pavement operations were initiated in September and should be completed this month. The 2,950 linear feet of the multi-use pathway adjacent to I-93, that trail, what we're calling Trail South between Conley Street and Victory Road, has been constructed and paved, and plantings and final construction will continue to occur this fall. The trail north between Victory Road and the elevated boardwalk will be constructed also this fall, as soon as everything is complete on the elevated boardwalk. And the trusses, the pilings, the boardwalk was being set as of last month. And pile supports, overlook decks were 100% complete at the time of the letter that we submitted. I believe there may be delays on railings and some of the pieces for the boardwalk because of the hurricane Helene. There were some materials coming from that part of the country, and I believe that those might be delayed. The removal of the crane mats and the temporary construction access would all occur this fall once the bridge and the boardwalks and the trusses are all in place. Sidewalk resurfacing adjacent to Morrissey Boulevard would be completed this fall. All the stormwater management trenches were complete on the southern piece of the trail, and they would be completed with the rest of the trail as that's constructed. And the repair and modification of the existing tide gate was also completed. So that's a quick review of the work done, showing significant progress towards the end goal of completing construction, and we would just like to request the extension from the commission tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I see Stella from DCR is on the call tonight. Seeing that, I feel like changing what are the conditions so we can have a spirited discussion on conditions with DCR, but I'll refrain. I don't have any questions. Before I go to Ellen, I just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Elena, what do you have?
We don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Linay?
No questions from me.
Commissioner Wilson?
None here either, thanks.
Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbst?
Will there be a grand opening, and when can I ride my bike on it?
Stella and I have been waiting for that too, for the celebration.
Soon enough.
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any hands raised. So with that, I would entertain a motion to extend the order of conditions for DEP file number 0061802, Boston file number 2021-033 for a period of 3 years.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, thank you. Good luck.
So much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for an extension to the original order of conditions issued for DEP file number 0061822 and Boston file number 2021-047 from CHA Consulting, Inc. on behalf of the Herb Chambers Companies for the proposed demolition and redevelopment of an existing car dealership located at 710 to 720 Morrissey Boulevard in Dorchester. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Between the original hearing and issuance of the order of conditions for this matter, and now the firm has hired an attorney who represents the Herb Chambers Companies in some matters. So out of an abundance of caution, I will recuse myself. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Commissioner Herbst as interim chair for this hearing. Could someone make that motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Take that. Okay. Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is somebody here for the applicant?
Yes. Hi, I'm Tyler King with CHA Consulting on behalf of Herb Chambers Company.
Okay, so
So I did provide just a couple slides just to give everyone a quick refresher. So this is the project location. It's in the existing Honda dealership on Morrissey Boulevard at the corner of Freeport Street and Victory Road. If you go to the next slide, as I said, it operates currently as an existing car dealership. It's sandwiched in between the Toyota Expressway Toyota and the 7-Eleven, right across the street from the CVS on the other side of Morrissey. The plan is to demolish this existing building, and if we flip to the next slide, we're proposing a 4-story state-of-the-art Honda dealership, improved parking, landscaping, sidewalks on Freeport, Victory, and Morrissey, stormwater infrastructure. And this project has just been delayed. Once we received approval back, I think it was November of 2021, we were working our way through the other departments within the city of Boston, and we do have approval from all of them. We went through PIC, Boston Water and Sewer, DCR for the Morrissey Boulevard work, and we do have a building permit at the moment. We're just working with the contractor to move this project forward. So we're coming up on the 3-year mark, so we are requesting an extension to this order of conditions.
Okay, thank you. Elena, do you have anything for us on this?
We don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. So as a reminder to members of the public, to provide public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. So I'll go to the commissioners first. Commissioner Linay, any comment?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, no questions. Thanks.
Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Okay. I also don't have questions, so I would entertain a motion to extend this permit by 3 years.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
I vote aye. I just want to make sure that there was no public comment on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Elena, was there any comment?
I see no hands raised and nothing in the inbox either.
Okay. Then I'll vote aye, and that makes it toward it. Okay. Thank you. You're all set.
Great, thank you. Okay, there have been some continuances, or notice of intent for DEP file number 0061961 and Boston file number 2023-051. And also notice of intent for DEP file number 0061996 and Boston file number 2024-021. We'll now begin our regular meeting. The first item is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061731 and Boston file number 2020-015 from TRC Environmental on behalf of NStar Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for the proposed construction of a harbor walk located at 500 East First Street, South Boston. Resource areas, land subject to coastal storm flowage, waterfront area, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
Yes, so staff conducted a site visit on October 10th. There were a few discrepancies from what was originally permitted. There is an area that has riprap rather than grass, but this is to prevent erosion due to grade change. So any water that might be flowing along there probably would have eroded a lot of the grass had it been planted there. And the other modification was a slight change in location at the northeast corner of the Harbor Walk path. They did this to avoid creating a steep gradient on the southern side of the walkway. However, the overall length and footprint of the walkway was consistent with what was permitted. So the path, as it was paved, follows the contours of the area, but did move it closer to the water, which caused an additional 538 square feet of impervious area within the 25-foot waterfront area. That being said, the project overall is a significant increase in pervious area. And based on what we saw when we were on site, it looked as though the change that was made to the path's location overall had lessened impacts and was, yeah, less impactful to pave it the route that it went. But happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. It's very helpful. I don't have any questions. Commissioner Linay,
No questions.
Commissioner Wilson,
None here either. Thanks.
Commissioner Richmond.
I'm good also, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst.
No questions.
Okay, so with that, I'd entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061731 and Boston file number 2020-015. Please.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061814 and Boston file number 2021-041 from Fort Point Associates on behalf of the MCP3 Foundry LLC for the renovation of an existing building and demolition and reconstruction of a second building located at here's my best French, Abampon Way and 3 Anchor Way, South Boston. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage.
For this
Elena,
one,
what do you
oh yeah, apologies. For this one, similarly, staff conducted a site visit on October 10th. There were a few minor outstanding items which seem to have been resolved, but we have not been able to conduct another site visit as they were resolved towards the end of today. So we would recommend that the commission hold off on a vote until we've been able to conduct a second site visit.
Okay, then we'll hold off on a vote. Next item is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061502 from Fort Point Associates on behalf of the Charlestown Marina LLC for the reconstruction of the Pier 6 Marina facilities and improved landscaping amenities at Piers 6 and 8 and portions of the harbor walk between both piers. This is in Charlestown, and resource areas are tidal flats, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and land under ocean. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
Again, we conducted a site visit on October 10th, and based on what we saw and based on the filing, we would recommend issuing a complete certificate of compliance with the perpetual 8 maintenance conditions, which we have listed in the staff comments. And depending on what's easiest, I can the numbers of the conditions rather than reading them out are numbers 27, 33, 45, 46, 58, 66, 68, and 69, which were all identified as perpetual maintenance conditions in the original order of conditions.
Okay, fantastic. As someone who lives over there, I can tell you this is a major improvement over what existed before. So happy to see this come to a close. Commissioner Linay, any questions for Eleanor? Or any questions from any commissioners for Eleanor?
I was just curious about flagging the perpetual conditions. Is that something new we're doing, or
we are constantly looking to improve our processes, and we've realized that despite the fact that they are included in the original order of conditions, it might be clear down the line to also flag those on the certificate of compliance. And the way that the form is set up currently, it asks for the numbers of the conditions that were listed in the original order of conditions. So just to cover bases, we figured that that might be good to include in any motions.
What a good idea.
Very good. Thank you.
More work for title attorneys and closing attorneys. Fantastic. Okay. I would entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061502.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 5-0. Thank you. Next item is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061490 from VHB on behalf of ARE Mass Region number 74 LLC for the construction of a new 12-story building at 15 Necco Street, as well as the rehabilitation of 2 existing buildings and associated activities at 5 and 6 Necco Street in South Boston, 4 Point Channel. Resource areas land subject to coastal storm flowage. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
Similarly, we conducted a site visit, and based on what we saw, we would recommend issuing a COC with the perpetual maintenance conditions identified, which are noted in the staff comments. And I believe we also have some slides from the applicant available.
Okay, I'll go on your recommendation. I don't need to see the slides, unless. Is this the one I was thinking about before when I thought there was a presentation?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so let's see the good work that's been done there.
Yeah, good evening, John Moser with VHB. So we just presented the slides in case anyone needed a refresher, but representing the project at 15 Neco Street and the request for a certificate of compliance. Next slide. So this just gives you a review history of the project and what we've been through. So the original order of conditions included the whole project site. We got a partial COC issued in 2019 of that beige grayed out area. And then we're requesting the COC for the red area here. So next slide. And this is just the completed project. We provided the documentation of compliance with conditions, as-built plans, and then the noted minor deviations was the south side layout and grading adjustments, which were in coordination with the abutters, utility adjustments in the street, which were all, underground. And then the planting swaps listed there, which are native to Suffolk County. And next slide. And I believe just some photos. And I believe the next slide is just any questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions. Commissioner Linay?
I don't have any questions either.
Commissioner Wilson?
None here either, thanks.
Commissioner Richmond?
Excuse me, no, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Herbst?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance. Lost it because I'm looking at the presentation. Okay, certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061490.
So moved.
Okay, I'll take that as a second as well. So Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, thank you, John.
Yep, thanks everyone.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061925 and Boston file number 2023-012 from FOF Infrastructure and Environment LLC on behalf of Holcim U.S. Charlestown Terminal for the rehabilitation of a timber bulkhead and installation of steel piles and precast concrete blocks and replacement of the revetment located landward of the bulkhead located at 285 Bedford Street in Charlestown. Resource areas are designated port area, land under ocean, coastal banks, rocky intertidal shores, fish runs, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
Staff conducted a site visit on October 10th, and based on what we saw, we would recommend issuing a complete certificate of compliance for the work.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Eleanor? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061925 and Boston file number 2023-012.
So moved.
Give a second. Thank you. Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Thank you. Eleanor, any administrative updates?
We have none tonight.
Thank you. Okay. I reviewed the September 4th, 2024 meeting minutes because they are ready. And I believe September 18th and October 4th are not. So I would entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of September 4th, 2024.
So moved.
We
Second.
have a second. Thank you. Commissioner Linay?
I wasn't at that meeting. Does that matter?
No, it's okay. As long as you've looked through the materials tonight.
Aye.
Did you familiarize yourself with the minutes?
Yeah.
Did you notice they were, okay, then we're fine. So you voted aye. Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, favorite motion of the evening, the motion to adjourn by acclamation. No objections, I assume. So thank you very much, Elena, Dee Dee, and everyone else, and see you in a few weeks.
Thanks all.
Okay,
Thank
good
you all.
night.
I guess.